Hello! So if you're a follower of the channel, you'll know that most of my videos tend to be list videos about movies. It's one of my favourite things. I love watching movies and I like recommending them. But this one's going to be a little bit different. This is a list video about 10 comfort movies for me, and they're all from the 90s, which is when I was a teenager, so maybe that's got something to do with it. They're just movies that I know very, very well. So what I mean by comfort movies is like the movies that you put on when you just want to be entertained, and it's the movies that you know like the back of your hand, or if you're feeling a bit down or a bit poorly and you just want to put something on that's going to make you feel a little bit better or just soothe you a little bit. These are those films. So this is my top 10. Let's get into it. So in at number 10, we have Hackers. So this is a movie all about computer hackers in the 90s, and they're kind of battling each other, but also battling this big corporation. I mean, as far as I'm aware, the hacking in this is nothing like hacking in real life. But it was the 90s. What did we know? Everything just looked cool. And this was one of those movies that I just loved the soundtrack. I loved the characters. There's some great performances by Angelina Jolie and Johnny Lee Miller in this one. And it just has a sort of weird charm to it. It just feels like a really genuine and a really sort of complete universe that they've made with all these sort of hackers and different people that they interact with. So I really, really enjoyed this one. As I say, this has got a really, really great soundtrack. It's a great techno soundtrack, which was that part of the 90s where everything was a little bit dancey and a little bit ravey. So yeah, I love this movie. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. It is a bit ridiculous, but it's a lot of fun. So in at number 9, we have Jawbreaker. Now, for me, this is an absolute cult classic. And it's a high school movie about a group of friends who play a prank on one of their friends and kidnap her, put her in the back of a car and put a jawbreaker in her mouth to keep her quiet. Jawbreaker's a really, really big sweet. And they put it in her mouth. She swallows it and dies while she's in the car. So they have to find a way to get rid of the body, and then obviously wackiness ensues and everyone's trying to figure out what happened. And this one is insane. It's pretty wacky and it's very, very 90s. This is one of those high school movies where you can tell that the actors have not been in high school for a very long time. However, they've got some really cool performances in it. It's got some great actors, people like Judy Benz and Rose McGowan and Pam Grier, who is a legend. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I personally love it, and it's kind of a mixture between a sort of Clueless and Mean Girls. So if you like those movies, you'll probably like this one. So in at number 8, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, I know what you're thinking. This movie isn't the best, and obviously it's nowhere near as good as the TV series, which is one of my favourite TV shows of all time. But it does have a lot of charm to it, even though the action hasn't aged well. And this one was the sort of original movie where Buffy sort of started, really. And technically it is canon. They do talk about some of the events in the movie that happened in the series and in the comics as well. So this is a bit of a strange one because when I watched it originally in the 90s, I rented it from the video shop and then ended up buying it, but didn't realise that in the UK there was a scene that was kind of chopped out of it. And this was a scene where Buffy sort of faces off against Lothos and takes a crucifix out of her bag, and he just kind of frowns and then she runs away in the one that we watched on the UK version. But actually, if you watch it on DVD now, or you watched it in other parts of the world, she actually gets an aerosol can out of her bag and sprays it and turns it, the cross, into a flamethrower, which I thought was really cool, and didn't see it until many, many years later, and suddenly that scene really made sense. It's a little bit like the scene with Catwoman in Batman Returns, where she puts the aerosol cans in the microwave. That was also cut out in the UK as well, and we didn't really get to see it until many years later when they just changed the rules, I guess, and put it out on DVD, and now we get to see it, so that makes a lot more sense too. So this movie is a comfort movie for me because not only do I love Buffy, but I loved the film when it first came out, and it's just a really silly action movie. The fighting, as I mentioned, isn't that great, but it's still passable, and it does have some really cool cameos in it as well. Hilary Swank is in it, and also blink and you miss it, but Ben Affleck's also in this as well. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. But yeah, it's always going to have a special place in my heart. So in at number 7, we have But I'm a Cheerleader. So this one is a really wonderful cult classic queer comedy. And this one is a sort of tongue-in-cheek look at gay conversion therapy. So it's all about the main character who is a cheerleader and is basically starting to discover that she might be a lesbian, and her parents send her off to a school to basically sort of get that out of her, pray the gay away, as it were. And it's just a really fun look at that. It's got some great actors in it, and some really lovely performances, but also it's incredibly funny. It's got Clea Duvall, who I love, and also RuPaul is in it. So if you want to see a film where RuPaul is basically not in drag and playing a completely different person to who he is normally, then yeah, this is the movie. It's got a really lovely colour palette. It just looks really vibrant and has just a really great grading to it. I think the colours in this are wonderful, but also it's just one of those movies where, especially if you grew up sort of LGBT, you will really just resonate with it, and yeah, it'll probably be in your top 10 as well, I guess. And at number 6, we have The Truth About Cats and Dogs. So this is a really wholesome rom-com that kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, but I really love it. And even though it's quite predictable, it's still a really sweet movie to watch. So this one is about a radio DJ played by Janine Garofalo, who I absolutely love. And she talks to people on the radio about their animal problems or their pets. And she talks to this guy who is having problems with his dog, and basically they start to kind of interact and flirt a little bit. And because she kind of has a low self-esteem and low self-image, which a lot of us have, she basically says to him that she looks like her friend, who is played by Uma Thurman. So then we get a situation where the guy is falling for the person who he hears on the radio and on the telephone, but also the person that he met in real life, which is Uma Thurman. So yeah, obviously there's a situation there, but it's a really nice story, and obviously the film is full of cute animals as well, so win-win. But yeah, if you haven't seen this one, check it out. It really cheers me up. So in number 5, we have Tank Girl. So this is a cult classic again, but this is also a comic book movie. It's based on the Tank Girl comics by Jamie Hewlett and Alan Martin. Jamie Hewlett obviously went on to do the artwork for Gorillaz many years later, but has now gone back to Tank Girl and is still making stuff for it. But this movie is all about Tank Girl, played by Laurie Petty, who is living in a post-apocalyptic world where there's no water, and she's going up against a company who is basically stockpiling all the water just because it can. This one is incredibly wacky. It's very silly, and if you're liking films like sort of Deadpool or Guardians of the Galaxy, you'll probably enjoy this for what it is. There's a lot of this film that got cut out, so there's certain things that just don't really make a lot of sense. There's huge deleted scenes that really need to be put back in at some point, but that makes it no less enjoyable. I absolutely love this movie. It's obviously not the best comic book movie out there, but it just has heaps of charm, some really funny performances, and also a fantastic soundtrack. If you get a chance to listen to the music afterwards, go and find it. It's so good. But yeah, Tank Girl is one of those movies that I probably know all the words to. I could probably tell you the whole script to it, but I still absolutely love it. Also, fun fact, the amazing burlesque performer Wild Vixen does a really good Tank Girl act, and I recently booked her to do that at one of my shows that I put on for Punker. And if you go over to the Punker YouTube channel, so type in Punker Bristol or just hit the link that's in my introduction video, then you'll be able to see that performance as well. But yeah, if you haven't seen Tank Girl yet, you need to go and watch it. It's very silly but very fun. In at number 4, we have Chasing Amy. So this is probably my favourite Kevin Smith movie, and it's actually the first one of his movies that I ever watched. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan, including the new Masters of the Universe series. I thought that was brilliant. No matter what people say, I really enjoyed it, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. But Chasing Amy was just a really heartfelt and beautiful story. It's all about a main character who is a comic artist called Holden, and he's played by Ben Affleck, and he falls for a girl called Alyssa, played by Joey Loran Adams, who is incredible in this. And she just happens to be gay. And basically they start to form a friendship, and he starts to realize that he's fallen in love with her, and she starts to realize that she might actually have feelings for him as well. So the whole film just follows this sort of crazy romance and drama, and just has a lot of heart. It has a really beautiful message. So even though there's a couple of things that some people find problematic about this movie, I find it just a really lovely, raw and emotional, but really nice film, and has some great queer representation in it, and also has some really nice ways of looking at relationships and friendships, and really how we navigate the world. So it's a really lovely film that I just like watching, and it's definitely my favourite out of all the movies that he's done, even though he's done some amazing movies since, and he did some great movies before that. I really love Clerks and Mallrats, but this was sort of my gateway into the View Askew universe, and this was my sort of first Kevin Smith movie, but it's still my favourite. So in number 3, we have Biodome. Now this one is all about two stoners who kind of break into this big sort of biodome, which is a self-sufficient environment, and it's where scientists are gonna live for 1 year to see if they can become completely self-sufficient in there, grow crops and treat the air, things like that. And they realize that when they got locked in, they're in with these two stoner guys who basically cause mayhem. As I mentioned, it's a bit of a silly movie, and it does take a while to warm to it, but once you do, it's just has this wonderful charm about it, and just really, really funny scenes. It also stars Kylie Minogue, which is quite funny. This one is one of those movies where if you find people who've watched it, they'll probably quote it at you for hours. There's so many just really great one-liners in it, and so many different funny situations that they get into. So it's one of those movies that you'll probably want to watch with your friends as well, but I just find it really comforting. It's very funny and just quite easy to watch. So before our final 2 picks, yes, that's 2 movies because these 2 are very special to me, but I want to hear from you. Are any of the movies on my list on your comfort movies list? Do you have a comfort movie, and what is it? Is it a guilty pleasure that you don't really tell anyone, or is it something that everyone watches but you still love it anyway? What are your comfort movies? Are they from a specific decade or just lots of different times in your life? So let me know in the comments, and obviously let me know if you go away and watch any of these. Come back and let me know what you think. And don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this, and subscribe because it helps the channel out, it helps me, and also it helps more people see my videos as well. And also it means that you'll get to see the next one that I make, which could be anything from sci-fi, horror, video games, comics, movies, music, anything like that. So yeah, hit the subscribe button and let's crack on. So in at number 2, we have one of my favourite movies of all time, and this is called Reality Bites. So this is a sort of underrated movie from the 90s, but just one that I could watch again and again. I absolutely love it. It's about a girl called Elena, who is played by Winona Ryder, who again is one of my favourite actresses, and she is basically filming her friends for a documentary about them and to sort of make a film about it. One of her friends is played by Janine Garofalo, who I've mentioned before is also one of my favourite actresses, and her documentary gets picked up by her boyfriend, the person that she's dating, who works at a kind of like MTV style corporation, and they sort of exploit it a little bit. But yeah, there's lots of different things that happen in between. Again, there's some really nice queer representation in this one as well. But it's just a really nice movie to watch. I find it really easy, and it's got some really wonderful scenes in it that you can't help but want to recreate, especially the one in the gas station. So look out for that one. But again, a really great soundtrack to this, and if you can find it on Region 1 American DVD, there is a 10th anniversary version that is amazing. It's got some really great special features on it. Unfortunately, they never released that version in the UK, so you'll have to go and find it and then find a multi-regional DVD player if you're in the UK. But yeah, this is a really lovely movie, and as I mentioned, it's one of my favourites, and I could watch it on repeat. Reality Bites is just perfect. So in at number 1, I can safely say this is my favourite movie of all time, and it's called Empire Records. So this is again another cult movie. This is all about a record store in the 90s where all the workers find out that the shop is going to be taken over and turned into a sort of big corporation store. And a lot of things go on besides that as well. There's lots of different interpersonal relationships and some really lovely character moments. So when I first watched this movie, it was really late at night on TV, and I just remember I could not stop thinking about it. It just left me with such a really nice, happy feeling. And the following day, I went out and bought it on video. So for years and years, I thought that that was the definitive version of it. And it had a lot of scenes that just didn't make sense, things that just didn't have any context, but I just took for granted. But many years later, we got treated to the DVD, which is the fan remix edition. And this one includes loads of deleted scenes put back into the movie that gives it lots of context. There's lots of things that are referenced in the original version that just didn't make any sense. And this version kind of fills in a lot of the gaps, and I absolutely love it. A lot of people aren't a fan of this version, but I think that it's incredible, and for me it's the definitive version now because it just makes a lot more sense. This is another movie that has a fantastic soundtrack. I'm still listening to it today. It's got some great tunes on there, so you need to check that out as well. But it's a movie that it's really strange to say that not a lot happens, but everything happens and has so many different things going on. It stars Liv Tyler and Renée Zellweger, and has lots of other stars that went on to do some really great things. But yeah, this is my favourite movie just because I could watch it over and over again. It gives me a really lovely feeling when I watch it. And whenever I find people who like it, they always quote it as well. And it's just one of those films that when you realise someone likes it, they like it for all the same reasons that you do. So yeah, if you can check out Empire Records, if you haven't seen it before, go and watch it and just soak it up. It's such a good movie. So that's it. That's my top 10 comfort movies from the 90s. It's a list I never thought I'd do, but I had a lot of fun making it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Let me know your comfort movies in the comments, and don't forget to do the thumbs up and all the lovely YouTube things, subscribe and all that. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.